What's up, everybody, and welcome to another episode of the Candid Couch.
What's up?
This is a weekly podcast where we talk about any and everything, and we get into some really good topics, and we want to make it interactive, so we want to hear your feedback. I'm joined by my husband.
Kip, how you guys doing? We really enjoy you guys leaving the comments and the likes and the shares and whatnot. Continue to do that. We see you guys.
Yeah, thank you guys for participating. Continue to do so, and we'll continue to put out these episodes. So we're going to go ahead and get started today. We got a pretty good episode coming, and we are going to kick this episode off with our question of the day. All right, so our question of the day is, how have you coped with anxiety and depression? You want to go first?
Yeah, sure. That's a good question. Anxiety and depression, it's a pretty serious thing. For me, in the past, I haven't really coped with it the best way. I've used like food and other things like video games and things like that to cope sometimes. But like moving forward, I am trying to use healthier means like exercise, and now we've started reading our Bible and praying like first thing in the morning. That kind of starts the day off really well, in my opinion. But reading scriptures throughout the day really helps as well, and definitely praying for me. So, what about you?
I think for me, I've also had some unhealthy methods. Prior to my career was my coping mechanism for all
Mm,
those things. So
right.
I would literally work to kind of numb whatever I was feeling or whatever I was thinking or whatever was being triggered. So a lot of times, and my husband will tell you this, a lot of times when I feel myself going into depression or I feel myself getting anxious, I won't stop and relax. Like I'll fill my day with things to do to kind of keep my mind off of whatever's going on. Like
Mm,
he'll be like laying down relaxing and I'll be cleaning the whole house. And like after I clean the house, I'll sort out the closets. And after I do that, I'm like, well, I'll go shopping. I'll go to the store and do this. And then I'll clean the cars out. Like it's like a constant moving and going. And I think that that's one of the signs that I'm trying to cope with anxiety and depression. And I think for me, it hit really hard after we had our daughter. And I think that's when I really realized like that my coping mechanisms were sort of a detriment to me.
unhealthy. Yeah. Yeah, I remember that. You would work all the time, and I'd be like, "Why are you working when you don't have to?" Like, or staying super late. And I know you kind of like chasing your dreams as well. So, but I could see. I'm definitely a witness to the cleaning part, though. Like, when she's going through something, she'll bust that broom up and that vacuum real quick. But what are you doing like now, or what do you like plan on doing moving forward to kind of like have like a healthier coping?
Well, I would say that's more so the way that I have coped in the past. And I can say that that sort of creeps up in me still to this day. But I'm trying to cope with more peaceful mechanisms where, like, with like prayer and just kind of going into worship, telling God what the issue is, what it is that I'm anxious or fearful about, because
Right.
it is in scripture that that's not how we should carry on our lives. We should cast our cares on God.
Mhm.
So I'm trying to, really take that and put that into my everyday life. And then just trying to find ways to remain peaceful, getting rest and, getting outside, getting outdoors, just walking, being around nature, just finding a place of peace.
Yeah, you gotta get that vitamin D, like going outside and going for a walk. And one thing that really helps for me, like every morning, I have to take the dog out for a walk. Like I may not know it, but I feel like that really does something for me when I'm, taking the dog for a walk. If it's rain, if it's like really hot outside or whatnot, but it's really good because I know I probably wouldn't go for walks like that if I didn't have to. So, having to do that really kind of sets my mind in the right headspace and praying and stuff while I'm doing that. So that definitely helps.
Yeah, I would say for both of us, having a dog and walking the dog, I think sometimes gives us a lot of time to clear our head. I guess in moments where we may not have felt the urge to do it before. There's been a lot of times where I was going through something or feeling something, and you just take the dog for a walk for 30 minutes. And by the time I come back, I've prayed, I've read scriptures on my phone. Maybe I even listen to some music on my phone. And whether it's, a stressful issue, or it's like I said, depression creeping up. Like sometimes you just got to get out and get away from whatever it is in your mind that's pressuring you or bothering you, and just set your mind on better and other things.
Right, exactly. And for the anxiety part, I think like I try to come to the realization now that, when I get that feeling of anxiety, I will worry like what's gonna happen if this doesn't work out or this, that, and the other. That will really bother me, like especially early in our marriage. But like I think moving forward now, I really try to like put that anxiety on God and trying to like not worry and kind of like trust what the word says about that, and just kind of like there's no reason to be anxious. Like just have faith and trust in him that he's going to come through, even if it's not what you really want. As long as it's in his will, it gives you that peace, regardless.
Right. And I think that that's truly necessary. So go ahead and do us a favor. Hit us up in the comments. What are some of the ways that you have coped with anxiety and depression in the past? What are some ways that you're coping with it now? Let us know.
So the topic of the day is depression and anxiety.
Okay.
All right, so let's get some facts about it. Like you have some information about that.
Yeah. So we just kind of did some research on symptoms of anxiety and depression. And I'll go ahead and do the symptoms of anxiety first. Signs and symptoms include feeling reckless. Feeling restless, being easily fatigued, having difficulty concentrating, being irritable, headaches, muscle aches, stomach aches, or unexplained pain, difficulty controlling feelings of worry, having sleep problems such as difficulty falling or staying asleep. Um, and here we have signs and symptoms of depression, persistent feeling of sadness or loss of interest, characterized characterized as major depression and can lead to a range of behavioral and physical symptoms. They may include changes in sleep, appetite, energy level, concentration, daily behavior, or self-esteem. So, what do you think?
I mean, that's some real stuff right there. I know in times past, a lot of people have thought that depression and anxiety wasn't like a real thing, but it really is a real thing. I mean, the thing just comes up on you sometimes.
I think it's something that we haven't had enough conversation about. I think it's something that sometimes it
Right.
can be swept under the rug. So I think as time goes by, now in 2022, we have resources. We have, things that we can talk about, people we can talk to, even platforms like podcasts and music, things that will help us, not feel like we're alone in this journey.
Exactly. I mean, therapy's a huge help because growing up, like for myself, like I don't even remember therapy even being like a thing people talked about or like went to. It's kind of like a thing where only crazy people go, or if you have issues, you would go. If you're crazy, you would go there. But everybody has mental traumas and strain and things they need to work through and talk about. And going to someone who can kind of like navigate that mental strain is extremely helpful. And I believe that it definitely kind of relieves a lot of stress and anxiety out of your life, because you kind of could target, oh, this is what's causing me to feel this way, or there's instead of walking about through your day, kind of confused why you feeling the way you feel, or why you stressed, or why you kind of feel down all the time. But then you go talk to somebody who knows what they're doing and can navigate through that. You can kind of like get an understanding of, wow, like this is why now these are things that I can do to kind of combat these feelings. So what do you think?
I think now also we're, like I said, living in a generation where we're freer to talk about these things. I can't imagine that in the 1920s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. I can't imagine that. I mean, obviously, like there weren't resources like articles and Google and stuff at some point. There weren't therapists, in the way they are now. I mean, there's even like online therapists that you can go to sitting in your living room and tell them what's ailing you. You can
Mhm.
tell them what the issue is from your living room. Now you don't even have to leave the house. They have like therapy apps where you can text someone, "Hey, I'm having a hard day. Can you help
Right.
me?" You know what I mean? So there's so many resources now, but I think really being able to diagnose that it is an issue. I think that especially in the Black community, and it is unfortunate to say this, but in the Black community, we've experienced this whole keep your mouth shut, just deal with it and, tread the water, this is life. And I think that to live an uncomfortable life where you're constantly being pressed and stressed by your traumas and by your triggers, I don't think that that's just getting by. I mean, if you really think about it, we're not here forever, I mean, we're not here forever. So it's like while we're here living this life, I think we have to find some type of peace and some type of peace within our struggle, whatever it is that's triggering us, whatever it may be, that whether it's childhood trauma or whether it's things that are bothering us, in our adulthood, I think that we owe it to ourselves to talk to someone about it. And like I said, sometimes in the Black community, we can be real quiet about the way that we're feeling. Maybe we haven't felt like we could open up about it. I've talked to people when first starting a therapy journey, like I think that people think in general when you say you're going to therapy, like, oh, what's going on with you? Like maybe there's nothing completely serious, but there's some things we all need to work through.
Mhm.
Somebody going to therapy doesn't mean they're suicidal. Somebody going to therapy doesn't mean that, their life is all jacked up. Sometimes it may be the case, but sometimes we just want to keep our peace, and live a happy, comfortable life where we're not completely stressing the entire day about things.
Exactly. They just want to go to just kind of shape some things up in their life, like, or fix some things up. I mean, that makes a lot of sense.
And there's nothing wrong with going when things are good. There's nothing wrong. I mean, if we're being honest, it's better to make it a continual thing than just wait for everything to fall apart and then say, okay, let's try therapy.
Exactly. I know growing up in the black church, like I think that a lot of people who may be going through like dark times and like depression, anxiety, they would, kind of, I don't say demonize it, but make it seem like all that needs to be done is someone to lay hands on you and pray for you, and then that's it. I do believe in prayer. I do believe in all that stuff, but I do believe that God meets us where we are as well, where we get prayed for, and I believe God's opened the doors for people to go seek help. I mean, I think that's a work of God right there. Like God allowing you to go talk to somebody, or you, the God using that therapist to kind of get in your mind and kind of help you, work just like doctors and other areas. Like
He
you may be,
created them.
yeah, exactly. I think like if you're going through some type of physical ailment or whatnot, God, made the doctors for you to go and the medicine for you to be able to go and get the help you need. I don't think everything is a lay in of the hands thing. That's that kind of like a quick resolve type situation. I think that like obviously I do believe that depression, anxiety is a spiritual thing, obviously, in my opinion. But I think that God uses people to help us in those areas like therapy and, things like that.
And I don't really feel, I've heard people say, like, I've heard people like actually say, like, what do you need therapy for if you got Jesus? And my struggle with that is that, of course, we need to have a relationship with God. We need to have a relationship um, with our Bible and with praying and making sure that we're finding our peace in God and, our happiness and our joy in God. And I get that part. But to me, I struggle with the idea that if I have a relationship with God, it takes me away from the opportunity to talk with someone through the things that are bothering me. And a lot of times we may not even actually know like what to pray for. And I know that
Mm,
in my journey of therapy and even in our journey through therapy with marriage counseling, like we found out things about ourselves that we did not know, and we also did not know the root. So sometimes we really try to put a band-aid on the cut. We put a band-aid on the cut, we want to feel better, we just keep putting the band-aid on, and then one day you realize like, wait, this is not healing, I'm just covering it up. And I think that going to therapy really gives you the option to be like, okay, let's talk about this wound. And sometimes like I think that our mental state reflects those things, and the way that we live our lives and our and everyday lives, like it affects that, the ability to be at peace with the things that have happened to you, with the things that you've done, with the things that you haven't done. Like I just don't see why we wouldn't use the resource if it's there.
exactly. You
I
know,
think we can have Jesus and therapy too.
right, exactly. I do think that I know some people may ask the questions of like, oh, where does this come from? Or like, why am I depressed? Or why am I anxious? Why this, that, and other? And I think that we all growing up have some type of trauma or trigger, or traumas rather, and that we never deal with that come up later in life that kind of triggers those feelings of depression or anxiety or things like that. Things we may not even notice, like maybe your parents got divorced at a young age, and then you kind of maybe black things out or kind of pushed it down as a kid. And obviously, you're not going to therapy. No one's putting you in therapy when you're like 8 or 9 years old. Probably not. And then you kind of carry this thing around for the rest of your life, and not knowing that you have an issue in that area, and you find later in life when you're married, or if you're in a relationship with someone, there's triggers that your partner kind of push the buttons of those triggers or whatnot, and then you realize, dang, I'm depressed, I'm anxious, and then you go to therapy and you talk to somebody and they say, hey, listen, because of this is why you are the way you are. It's like, wow. It's like, I mean, we grow up, and there's going to be troubles in this world, we already know that, but when we get to a point where we realize that we can get help and get someone to kind of help us navigate these traumas, these issues, it can really be beneficial. Like, I mean, if it requires medication, then go that route. Some people don't need it, some people can just talk to somebody and they can figure it out. But I think it's very healthy to navigate these things, because the mind is a very sensitive, you know, and interesting and complex part of the body that, I mean, all of us, we still trying to figure out how it works. But I mean, talking and getting those thoughts out in the open definitely, I think, helps a lot.
I was listening to a podcast, and he quoted a quote, and I don't remember who said the quote. I'm sure if I Googled it, I would, but we're not going to do that right now. But he said a lot of our problems stem from the fact that we're unable to sit in a room alone quietly for a long period of time. We need something to distract us.
Mm.
And if you really think about it, right? Like you say, all right, take a day off from work, completely quiet. Go into a closet, go into your bedroom, shut the door. Don't do anything for the day but just sit in silence. If you fall asleep, wake up, sit in more silence. Can you imagine the thoughts that would come to your head? The memories that would come to your head. And I think sometimes things haunt us that we haven't dealt with. So we try to make ourselves busy so we don't have to deal with them. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think I remember you telling me that. I mean, that was very interesting. It's like, well, I never thought of that. Like, because if you think about it, if you just sit in a room and knowing that you don't have to do anything or you're not doing anything, I think a lot of stuff will start coming to your mind, like things
all you
that
have
you
to do
don't
is think.
want to talk about or things
Yeah.
you don't want to think about will start definitely, coming up. It's like,
Right. So there's a few areas of depression that we want to get into, and we're going to go ahead and talk about those. So the first area that we want to get into, and we're going to try to keep it as brief as possible, because I think we have like three different ones that we want to go through. But the first one that I want to go through is postpartum depression. Postpartum depression is basically the aftermath after you have a kid, after you have a baby. And I heard someone say once, I never remember my references, but I heard someone say once, they said, sometimes we don't realize that after a woman has a baby, she's also a newborn. She's figuring everything out for the first time as well. And I think I can only speak from my own personal experience. I felt like everything sort of changed after the moment of her birth. Everything changed. My mindset changed, my priorities changed, my body changed, the way I was thinking had changed, I mean, your emotions, your hormones are everywhere, you know? And my story may be different than a lot of people's stories cuz I know I've heard a lot of women say it was immediate for them. For me, my postpartum depression didn't hit for at least 3 months. I think after 3 months, I think the reality of this new life and then the pressure of trying to keep um, a piece of myself while being a wife, while being a mother, trying to revive my career up after taking time away, it just led me crashing into this crazy depression. I was having all these crazy negative thoughts. I was fearful of everything. I never really thought about the concept of death until after I had my daughter. I think there was this crazy guilt and this crazy fear that made me afraid and for me, it was of being afraid to leave her in any sense. So it was the fear of driving with her in the car. Like, oh my gosh, what if something happens to us? It was the fear of going to sleep at night. Oh my God, what if I don't wake up? What's going to happen to my daughter? She needs me, you know? So it was this fear of like, what happens if something happens to me? And that was overwhelming, you know, to know that this person needs you. And it just kept coming to my mind. And it wasn't me being suicidal. It was actually the opposite. It was like I just wanted to clinch on and hold on to life so badly that it was scary that this concept was completely out of my control, you know. And it was like, for me, everything made me sad because it was like I wasn't enjoying the moments because I was so fearful of everything. I was fearful of every sound she made. I was like, I hope she's okay. You know, am I okay? Is everything okay? Is this okay? I mean, am I doing a good job? You know, so everything affected me in that way, and it just made me feel sad. You know, it really took over my mind.
Yeah, I know that was a tough time in the beginning of that situation when we had our child. I mean, it was rough for me too. Like I definitely was going through some changes. Obviously, I was super joyful, super happy when I seen our daughter. When I seen her when she was born, it was just like a joy that I can't explain. Like I didn't think I was gonna cry, but I really did cry. I was tearing up, and I was just like, I mean, it was so beautiful. And then to know that my wife just speaking like positive things and love into her ear do the process just was just amazing. But once we got home, I did notice that my wife was going through that, and I was going through some things on my own, like feeling, I guess, the fear and overwhelmed, knowing like everything is on my shoulder. I felt like everything was on my shoulders. I knew everything wasn't because my wife and I are a team, but I felt like everything was on my shoulders. Like, man, like, what if something happens? Like, what if I lose my job? What if I can't provide? What if I can't do this? A lot of the same questions a lot of men ask themselves, in those, precious moments of when you have people depending on you. Especially for someone, this is my first child, and this is our marriage, whatnot. So, those thoughts definitely came through. And some of the things that I did to kind of like cope with that was like one thing was like playing video games. And I would like play video games for hours and not think about the fact that like the overwhelming feeling of like anxiety or worry. And same with the thing you brought up about like how you felt like, I don't want nothing to happen to our daughter, like the
Right.
fear of like, oh, what if something happens? Like, I mean, when she got here, she was sleeping next to my bed. I couldn't get no sleep. Like every sound that I heard,
He was up,
I was
y'all.
up.
He was
Like
up.
I didn't get no sleep. I was up all night watching her like a hawk, making sure she was all right, making sure she was sleeping, she was breathing and all that. I wanted my wife to sleep because she, just went through a whole process, getting this baby out. So I was like, I ain't sleeping. I'm making sure they're all right. And, I just not knowing that she had to eat like I think every 2 hours, right? Or something, or every 3 hours, something like
Mhm,
that.
2, 3.
I was just like, and she slept on my side of the bed. I'm like, she's sleeping with me. She's sleeping over here. But that was definitely it was tough a little bit.
And I think even in terms for me, and I know we were both anxious about different things during the pregnancy, but I think for me, I didn't realize that I suffered from anxiety until I was pregnant. Like everything made me anxious, whether it was baby related or not, everything made me anxious. And I just started to think back over my life and realize that like that wasn't the first time I had felt that feeling. It wasn't the first time I had felt this fear of not having control of things,
That
like
was it right there.
right,
Control.
changing my mood based on things I can't control, like having actual anxiety attacks and not realizing they were anxiety attacks. Um, Being a manager for many years, you experience that anxious feeling all the time at work of like everything is on my shoulders. If something goes wrong, what happens? Like it's all on me. And I think sometimes it feels like that as a parent. And for a person like me, like I very much like to be in control of whatever is happening in my life. And I think when I don't have control and I don't have concrete evidence that everything is going to be okay or everything is going okay, I start to go crazy in my mind, maybe even thinking of negative possibilities, maybe even canceling out what it is that I can actually physically see because I just go crazy in my mind on what could be because I can't control it, you know?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's a crazy thing to think about. The fact that you want control, but once you have the control, You want the control, but if you don't have it, you feel anxious. You don't trust anyone else with it. But once you do have the control, the fact of, oh man, all this is on me. You anxious about the fact that the pressure's on too. So either way, you still feel that anxiety. It
Right.
sucks.
So another thing that I wanted to kind of chat about really quick is triggers, because triggers can sort of bring up both anxiety and depression, and sometimes they go hand in hand. So, what would you say is sort of your experience with triggers that sort of have led you into like a downward spiral of either anxiety or depression or both?
I would say probably for one, like if I like, I think when I lost my job at one point. They did a couple of like mass layoffs, which sucked. But I was in that number, and then anxiety kind of really, you know, came in because it's like, all right, now we got this nice place and everything like that. So I'm going to pay for this. How I'm going to provide for my family, this, that, and the other. Like a lot of pressure is going to be on my wife. Like, that was a lot to deal with. And so that was definitely one trigger that kind of led me into feeling anxious, and that anxiety brought me into like a depression where I had to use not the best healthy methods to kind of cope. Like I said before, like the video game or like overeating or things like that. And then I got to a point where it's like, uh, I started to get victory when I started to trust in God. Like I started reading my Bible and praying and stuff, and He was just telling me like, got to cast your cares on Him, and He doesn't want us to be anxious because we're supposed to trust in Him. So, and that brings us to peace. When we know we have a Savior, and and our God who we know we can trust on, and we know He's not going to fail. I mean, what's to worry about? Or especially one thing we always bring up when we have a trial in our life in this type of capacity. I think that we kind of look at our past like, okay, he did this. We had a situation like this before. He came through like out of nowhere, and we have faith, and he came through and we was fine. So let's look to that and trust and believe that he's gonna come through again. Like we have no reason to doubt now. So once I start realizing that, the fear and anxiety really kind of went away, and I started trusting him, and I was like, you know what, it's going to work out, and I'm just going to believe. I'm going to just do my part, and he's going to do his part.
Right, like Ty Tribbett said, if he did it before, he'll do it again. So another thing I want to touch on is the importance of taking care of your mental health. I mean, I think that's really important.
Yeah, it is. Absolutely. I do think it's important. I do wanted to ask, what was some of your triggers? I don't think you answered that question.
Well, like I said, I think a lot of my triggers go back to control. So not being in control triggers me to feel helpless. You know what I mean? It triggers
Okay.
me to feel helpless, to feel like, well, this whole situation is just going downhill and there's nothing I can do about it. Like, there was a situation where I was supposed to get a promotion. Well, I wouldn't say I was supposed to get it, but there were conversations that I was going to get this promotion, this particular promotion. I had worked really hard for it, and I mean really hard. I had worked hours that I wasn't supposed to work. I worked days that I wasn't supposed to work. And I remember sitting down with a regional manager, and I remember him telling me that we had to postpone the promotion because there was somebody else in training or something like that. And it was like a 6 week training. And I remember him telling me that we were going to postpone my training for at least, I think, 6 to 7 or 8 weeks. And that meant that I wasn't going to start even like talking about the position and training for the position for another 6 to 7 weeks or 8 weeks. And I remember at that time, I just felt like everything was out of my control. Like I've done everything, I've done my part, and everything has sort of led to this point where there's nothing I can do now. When I tell you that it made me lose interest in everything, it made me feel helpless, hopeless, like, whatever. Whatever happens, happens, whatever. I lost my passion for everything. Like, and I didn't realize at the time, but that was a spiral down into depression.
I mean, that's really unfortunate. Like that you had to go through that. That's really bad. But good
Yeah, I mean,
thing.
it is what it is. I think those things are going to happen in life. And I think that that goes to what we're talking about when we talk about like coping mechanisms. And what I was going to say is that we have to look at our mental health the same way we do our physical health, right? So if you have a pain in your kidneys, right, are you going to just be like, well, it'll go away? 2 weeks go by. Oh, it'll go away. 3 weeks go by, it'll go away. It really, really hurts and it's getting worse, but we just have hope that it's going to go away. No, you're not going to do that. Most people are not going to do that. Most people are going to go to a doctor and find out why I'm in pain. And we have to be the same way about our mental health. Something is causing me pain. something is causing me to be uncomfortable and I need to talk to someone about it.
If anything, that should be number one, because once your mind is, I guess gone, it kind of the body follows with the mind. It kind of sets the road, and the body kind of follows suit.
And it goes with the saying that stress will kill you just as fast as a bullet, and it absolutely will.
Yeah.
Your body responds to the negative things that you think. Believe it or not, it does.
Right. I think you read some things, listed some things off a minute ago. Like if you're extremely in a really deep depression and anxious, you'll start getting like what do you call those things? Like tingles in your hands, and like you'll get headaches, and like all these little symptoms are like the physical effects because of what's going on in your head. I mean, if you are worried all the time, you're not gonna be getting no sleep. And if you can't get no sleep, I mean, your body's not resting. It's restless, and that causes other problems. So it's the mind is at the top. Once you get that situated, the body will follow. Same thing with anything like, and it's a struggle for me to kind of sometimes like get the exercise I need to get in. I think that once I start really pushing myself in a mental space to do that, my body would really start to respond in a positive way. And obviously vice versa. If you don't kind of do that, you look for unhealthy coping mechanisms that can affect your physical state in a negative way, obviously.
Right. I think it works if you work it. And I think that we have to come prideless. Like we have to lose our pride and just say we need help. Like I said with the situation, when you go to the doctor, you're not looking at that doctor like this man can't help me. This man went to medical school. This man has performed surgeries before. Like I'm sure that they can help you with your knee pain. And we have to look at therapists that way too. I trust them to be able to help because what therapy really is they're just helping you to sort of unweave this ball of yarn. It's
Mm,
your ball of
that's good.
yarn, but they're basically just helping you to just kind of get rid of some of those strands that are tangled, sort of unravel it a little bit and just make it a little more easier to carry with you every day. So they're not doing the work, you're doing the work. They're just helping you find the pieces of the puzzle that you can put together so you can have a whole puzzle. So let's just get rid of our pride and get the help if you need it. I think that's the best way to go about it.
Absolutely. Thanks, guys, for joining us for another episode of the Candid Couch. We love you guys. Thank you so much for listening in.
This was a great topic.
This was really good. I hope you guys got something from this topic and this conversation, and we got some more stuff coming soon. Please, guys, leave some comments, like, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell, follow us on Instagram at the Candid Couch Podcast, also on Facebook with the same name. Yeah.
Check us out on Anchor and Spotify also if you have them.
Yes.
That's another place where you can find us.
Oh yeah, find us on Spotify. If you ain't doing anything, just put some headphones in and just listen in. Again, thanks guys, and we'll see you guys on another episode.
See you guys next week.